last year, we couldn't go 5 seconds of television without getting one of these thrown in our face. Last year, we couldn't watch 5 minutes of League Pass without getting one of these thrown in our face. They couldn't go to commercial break without throwing one of these in our face.
The WNBA is in a massive storm right now, one they absolutely never saw coming. For years, league execs leaned on corporate giants like Disney through ESPN and ABC to be their steady hand, while Amazon swooped in as the shiny new partner, bringing all that streaming cred. But here's the wild part, those quiet whispers about trouble. They've officially exploded into full-blown alarm bells. Both Disney and Amazon are reportedly rethinking everything, threatening to scale way back or even completely walk away from future TV rights. Without those crucial lifelines, the entire league risks losing the visibility and the massive cash injections that have literally kept it afloat.
No Caitlin Clark. These companies wipe their hands of the WNBA. They're not gonna put time, they're not gonna put effort, they're not gonna put money.
And get this, fans who used to see WNBA commercials, features, and highlights everywhere are suddenly noticing a deafening silence. The burning question isn't whether Caitlin Clark can single-handedly save the league anymore. Now it's whether the entire league can even survive without that massive corporate backing. And honestly, the answer might be a lot more brutal than anyone inside the WNBA is ready to admit.
Other than a Nike commercial, other than a Gatorade commercial, how many commercials have you seen of companies putting WNBA players as the face of their commercial? I can't think of one.
You know, when we talk about professional sports surviving for the long haul, the first thing that always comes up is broadcast rights. Seriously, in today's world, TV money isn't just some little bonus, it's the absolute backbone of everything. Think about it. Leagues like the NFL, NBA, even Major League Baseball, billions pour in because networks know viewers will tune in. That cash doesn't just pay the players, it keeps the entire league relevant, sparks tons of sponsorships, and basically guarantees fans can't avoid seeing their games. But here's the kicker, the WNBA has always been different. For years, they've banked on partnerships with giants like Disney through ESPN and ABC just to get games in front of casual audiences. The hope was simple. If enough people saw it, maybe just maybe, the WNBA would finally break through. But this is exactly where those cracks started to really show. Last season, Caitlin Clark exploded onto the scene, giving the league its first real taste of mainstream attention in years. And ESPN, oh, they absolutely leaned into that hype, pushing highlight reels and promoting every matchup featuring her Indiana Fever team.
That CarMax commercial, they ran that all Caitlin Clark's senior year at Iowa. They ran that all through the draft. They ran that all through last year. They ran that all through this year's draft. But we haven't seen it since Caitlin Clark has been down.
And let me tell you, those numbers weren't just better. They were absolutely historic compared to anything the WNBA had ever seen. Suddenly, you had people tuning in who'd never cared about the league before in their lives. Ticket prices spiked, jersey sales exploded, and get this, broadcasts were actually outperforming other established sports. It felt like the WNBA had finally truly turned a corner. But here's the plot twist. That massive surge wasn't built on a broad foundation of interest across all teams and stars. Nope, it was tied almost entirely to Clark. And when she went down with a season-ending injury, the viewing numbers dipped almost immediately. Games that once crossed 1 million viewers suddenly dropped to just a few 100,000. ESPN, which had been devoting full segments on First Take and SportsCenter to hype up her highlights, barely gave other matchups a passing mention. The WNBA once again became a ghost on mainstream sports media, unless Clark was on the floor.
WNBA players are back to being ignored by corporations and companies. They're back to being in obscurity. With Caitlin Clark, rising tide lifts all boats, and she was the tide that lifted them all.
The interest completely collapsed, and guess who noticed? The corporations. Disney, for example, isn't in the business of promoting sports that can't guarantee solid ratings. For them, the WNBA was supposed to be this long-term bet, a way to signal they cared about diversity, all while keeping their advertisers thrilled. But here's the harsh reality. Advertisers don't pay for feel-good stories. They pay for eyeballs. And the moment Clark vanished from the lineup, that buzz just evaporated. Suddenly, those million-dollar ad slots tied to WNBA broadcasts weren't worth nearly as much as they were before.
Ticket sales from $89 per ticket prior to Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury.
So when ticket prices plummeted 30% to just $62 a seat, that's when the first real whispers started that Disney might not renew its entire deal. Amazon, meanwhile, got involved with women's basketball because streaming platforms are desperate for live content. It's one of the only things people still watch in real time. But here's the kicker. Amazon also knows its numbers. If their streams aren't delivering, they are absolutely not going to keep investing their money.
Let's talk about some of these ratings real quick. Fever Mercury from last Tuesday, 310,000. Fever Mystics from last Sunday, 270,000. The Fever Mystics on NBA TV got outdrew by women's college volleyball on the Big Ten Network. Oh boy. Wing Sparks, the game right after, 130,000. And the finale between the Sky and the Aces did 90,000 views.
Reports are already suggesting that Amazon executives are reviewing whether the WNBA actually delivers enough return to justify the expense. Look, if Disney cuts ties and Amazon follows suit, the WNBA won't just lose visibility, it'll lose its entire lifeline. And honestly, this is only the beginning of a much bigger unraveling, because what comes next isn't just about big contracts, it's about sponsors, about those critical commercials, and about the league's overall relevance. Without that TV backing, you have to understand, everything else just starts to collapse.
And that goes into why they held off so long in announcing Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, because they knew people would stop showing up. They knew the excitement and the interest would wind down.
Now, let's talk about the absolute clearest sign of how fragile the WNBA's position really is, and you can see it in its advertising. Commercials aren't just filler, right? They're hard proof that big corporations believe in a product enough to drop millions putting their brand next to it. Last season, you literally couldn't turn on ESPN or League Pass without getting hit by back-to-back ads featuring WNBA stars. A'ja Wilson was everywhere for CarMax. Sabrina Ionescu popped up in State Farm skits. Sue Bird seemed to have a permanent promo slot. Those weren't just about selling cars, they were about attaching huge names to the idea that the WNBA was on the rise. But that illusion, it's faded fast. With Caitlin Clark sidelined and ratings plummeting, many of those exact same commercials have simply vanished. CarMax hasn't pushed new campaigns. State Farm, which used to plaster Liberty stars everywhere, barely includes the league in national spots. Fans who joked about reciting those ads word for word can't remember the last time they saw one, and that's no coincidence. Corporations chase momentum, and right now, the WNBA just isn't delivering it. Take the Paige Buckers commercial. Instead of being blasted across ABC during big-time sporting events, it's relegated to League Pass streams, seen only by the tiny niche already watching women's basketball. That's not national visibility, that's containment. For all the talk about growth, sponsors aren't investing outside of Clark's bubble, and when she's not on the court, that money dries up. And this is where Disney and Amazon really start to sweat. If advertisers are already pulling back, why would networks keep giving away prime real estate? Airing WNBA games without ad revenue to cover the cost isn't just unprofitable, it's a guaranteed loss. ESPN lives and dies by ad revenue, and when commercials vanish, executives don't see social justice progress or diversity initiatives. They see empty dollars. The disappearance of those CarMax and State Farm campaigns, that's a massive red flag, showing the hype wasn't organic, league-wide support, but temporary corporate virtue signaling riding Clark's coattails. What's even more damaging is the message it sends to casual fans. Last year, the sheer omnipresence of WNBA commercials made it feel mainstream. This year, the silence tells a different story, out of sight, out of mind. Without constant reinforcement through advertising, casual audiences forget, and when they forget, the numbers nosedive. WNBA players can talk about progress, but behind closed doors, corporations are cutting their losses. Disney and Amazon are just the biggest names applying pressure. If the sponsors disappear, the networks won't be far behind, and if they disappear, the WNBA could lose the stage entirely. That's where the real panic starts to show. But the ad problem is just one piece of the puzzle, because next up, we have the brutal collapse of ratings without Clark to carry the weight. Television ratings don't lie, they're the rawest truth in sports. The measurement networks and advertisers use to decide if something's worth their money. For the WNBA, Caitlin Clark's rookie season was supposed to be the breakthrough, and for a short time it was Fever Games were pulling over 1 million viewers on ESPN. Sometimes even outperforming MLB clips went viral. Highlights trended, and the league finally had its national draw. But the dream didn't last. The moment Clark went down with a season-ending injury, the numbers crashed. Fever Games without her plummeted into the 200,000 or 300,000 range. Some broadcasts outdrawn by women's college volleyball, a sport with a tiny fraction of the budget or promotion. Even NBA TV games, which Clark boosted to over 500,000 last year, dropped to half that without her presence. The excuse that it was just a Sunday slot or bad timing simply doesn't hold up, because the Fever had already proven they could compete against NFL games in prime time. The simple fact is this: without Clark, fans stop watching. For Disney, this is a nightmare scenario. ESPN can't justify devoting prime coverage to games pulling under 300,000 viewers when other sports can deliver triple or quadruple that. Every hour spent on WNBA broadcasts without Clark is an hour where advertisers lose money and networks hate losing money. That's why executives are already questioning if renewing the deal makes sense. Amazon faces the exact same headache. Live sports are supposed to be a streaming goldmine, one of the few types of programming that forces people to watch in real time instead of skipping or binging. But the WNBA doesn't deliver consistent numbers, it delivers Caitlin Clark numbers, and everything else is a steep drop-off. That inconsistency makes it impossible for Amazon to build a reliable streaming package around the league. Why pay top dollar for rights if only one player can guarantee an audience? The deeper issue is that these ratings expose the league's fragile foundation. For years, WNBA leaders claimed the problem was visibility, that if people just had the chance to see the product, they'd fall in love. Clark's rise gave them that chance, and while fans flocked to her, they didn't stick around for the rest. The drop-off proves that interest isn't spreading across the league, it's concentrated almost entirely in one player, and networks know it. That's what makes Disney and Amazon's hesitation so dangerous. Ratings aren't just dipping, they're collapsing without Clark. And if numbers don't stabilize, the WNBA faces the possibility of losing its biggest broadcasting platforms altogether. But the financial hit goes even deeper, because the next major sign of panic that shows up where fans feel it most: ticket sales and empty arenas. If ratings are the heartbeat, then ticket sales are the pulse you can see with your own eye. Nothing screams decline faster than empty arenas, and right now, the WNBA is feeling that pain. Just a few months ago, tickets to Indiana Fever games were the hottest in town. Prices skyrocketed on the secondary market as Caitlin Clark mania swept the league. Fans were shelling out nearly $250 a seat just to catch a glimpse of her, and for the first time in years, resellers were actually making money off WNBA tickets. That moment, it's vanished in the blink of an eye since Clark's injury. The average ticket price for Fever games has nosedived from nearly $90 to just over $60. On paper, that's a 30% drop, but the reality is even worse. Many fans who paid full price are now dumping tickets at fire sale rates, taking a fraction of what they spent. Imagine paying $250 for a lower bowl seat and being forced to unload it for $62. That's not a discount, that's desperation. Fans aren't just losing money, they're losing interest, and once fans stop showing up, the energy inside those arenas just evaporate. For the league, this collapse isn't just about the gate, it ripples into every other revenue stream. Empty arenas mean fewer concession sales, fewer jerseys bought, and fewer reasons for local sponsors to invest. Hot dogs, popcorn, merchandise, they don't sell when seats are half empty. Stadium parking lots don't fill up. Local bars and restaurants don't see the same game day rush, and the whole ecosystem around the WNBA starts to wither. The league desperately needs fans in the building to keep that energy alive, and without Clark, the draw simply isn't there. And get this also explains why the WNBA was so agonizingly slow to announce Clark's season-ending status. They knew the moment that news broke, ticket sales would crater. Every extra day they could sell seats before fans realized the star attraction was gone meant more short-term revenue. This wasn't a coincidence. You have to understand, this was pure business. The WNBA, fully aware of the financial disaster Clark's absence would cause, delayed confirming the inevitable. Every extra day they withheld the truth meant more tickets sold at premium prices and more short-term revenue secured. The league was essentially cashing in on fan loyalty, knowing full well the excitement would collapse once the official news broke. It was a gamble to protect the bottom line, but it also exposed the WNBA's desperation. This strategy raises serious questions about trust. Fans who spent hundreds of dollars expecting to see Clark now feel misled. Resellers who invested in bulk tickets lost money when the value tanked. Local businesses that counted on game day crowds saw demand plummet. By trying to squeeze out a few more weeks of profit, the league may have alienated the very people it needed most. The loyal supporters willing to put money down. Networks like Disney and Amazon also took notice. For broadcasters, credibility is everything. If a league is perceived as hiding information or manipulating fans for revenue, that becomes a liability. Advertisers don't want to be tied to controversy, and networks don't want to carry the burden of explaining away fan backlash. When Disney evaluates whether to renew WNBA rights, this kind of maneuver becomes part of the calculation. Do they really want to invest in a league that relies on delay and deception to survive a season? On a deeper level, this entire episode reveals how fragile the WNBA's business model really is. One player's injury shouldn't cause ticket sales, ratings, sponsorships, and credibility to collapse simultaneously, but that's exactly what happened, because Clark was the league's golden goose. By hiding her status, the league was admitting just how dependent it had become, and that dependence is now pushing Disney and Amazon closer to the exit. The fallout doesn't end there. Fans aren't just upset, they're skeptical. Even when Clark returns, many will wonder if they can trust the league's announcements. That doubt lingers, and once trust is broken, it rarely comes back. For a league fighting to prove itself legitimate, that's a devastating blow. And the question looms over everything. Can the WNBA survive if its entire foundation rests on one player? Or will Disney and Amazon decide the gamble is too risky and walk away before the illusion collapses completely? For years, league executives kept repeating this mantra: if the WNBA just had more visibility, more fans would follow. They believed that lack of exposure was the only obstacle holding women's basketball back. Give it airtime on ESPN, stream it on Amazon, put the players in commercials, and suddenly, the league would break through into the mainstream. For a while, Caitlin Clark seemed to prove them right. The cameras followed her everywhere. Social media clipped every highlight, and ratings jumped in ways the WNBA had never seen before. But when she went down with her injury, the theory collapsed because the interest didn't spread across the league. It stayed tied to her. This is the core problem with WNBA marketing. It's not about the league, it's about one person. Disney and Amazon know it, sponsors know it, and fans can feel it. The commercials featuring Aja Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, or Sue Bird only worked because Clark's buzz created an environment where those ads felt relevant. Without her, those campaigns dried up, and suddenly, the league returned to the same place it's been for decades, struggling to matter in the broader sports conversation. For Disney, this poses a nightmare scenario. When ESPN promotes the NBA, NFL, or MLB, it's promoting entire leagues with multiple marketable stars. Fans can tune in to see LeBron James, Steph Curry, Giannis, or a dozen others. But in the WNBA, casual audiences only tune in for Clark. That isn't sustainable. If Disney continues to pour resources into WNBA rights, they risk spending millions only to see ratings spike when one player's healthy and collapse the moment she's not. That kind of instability makes advertisers nervous and networks cautious. Amazon faces the exact same problem. Streaming platforms thrive on consistency. If one game pulls 1 million views but the next barely cracks 200,000, it's impossible to build momentum. Investors don't like uncertainty, and the WNBA right now is nothing but uncertain. Without Clark, Amazon's bet on women's basketball looks like a costly experiment. with no guaranteed return. Even the league's own players are aware of the imbalance. They talk about growth, but deep down, they know it's Clark driving the ticket sales, the jersey purchases, and the national buzz. Without her, they slide back into obscurity, and that's a bitter pill to swallow. The WNBA wanted to prove that the product itself was strong enough to stand on its own. Instead, it's proving that one superstar can mask the league's shortcomings, but only temporarily. This is why Disney and Amazon's hesitation feels like a turning point. If the WNBA can't market itself beyond Caitlin Clark, networks have little reason to keep investing, and if those networks walk away, the illusion of momentum disappears overnight. The league would be left exposed, forced to confront the uncomfortable truth. It has built its entire identity on a single player. It's not a foundation, folks. It's a house of cards, and with that foundation crumbling, the panic inside the league isn't just about contracts, it's about survival itself. Every league eventually hits a defining moment, a crossroads where survival depends on more than slogans and hype. For the WNBA, that moment is now. With Disney and Amazon threatening to walk away from TV rights, the league is staring at the harshest reality it has ever faced. Without major broadcast partners, there may be no national stage left. For years, executives leaned on the idea that corporate backing would shield them from failure. Disney gave the league credibility, Amazon gave it innovation, and together they kept the WNBA in the public eye. But those partnerships weren't unconditional. They were investments, and investments demand return. The problem is, the WNBA's returns have been built almost entirely on Caitlin Clark. Her rise gave the illusion of league-wide growth, but her absence revealed the truth. Ratings tanked, ticket sales collapsed, sponsors pulled ads, and the excitement evaporated. Disney and Amazon don't need to look at the league's statements or promotional campaigns to make a decision. The numbers are already telling an ugly, undeniable story. For Disney, sticking with the WNBA means sacrificing airtime that could be used on more profitable sport. Every underperforming broadcast hurts their bottom line and frustrates advertisers. For Amazon, the calculus is even simpler. If the WNBA can't consistently deliver viewership, the streaming experiment isn't worth the cost. The threats to walk away aren't empty. They're warnings that the networks are done waiting for the league to prove itself. This is the breaking point, because it exposes how unprepared the WNBA is to stand on its own. If those broadcast deals disappear, the league isn't just losing exposure, it's losing the foundation of its business model. Without TV money, player salaries shrink, sponsorships disappear, and the already thin margins of franchise owners collapse. Teams that barely break even now could quickly find themselves underwater. The idea of expansion, which executives love to float as a sign of growth, becomes a fantasy. Instead of adding teams, the league could be fighting just to keep the doors open. There is no backup plan. The WNBA has no secondary revenue stream strong enough to replace broadcast rights. Merchandise sales, ticket revenue, and grassroots promotions can't sustain a professional league at this level without the Disney and Amazon deals. The entire operation risks unraveling. Fans who once believed they were watching the beginning of a golden era may soon realize they were only watching a temporary wave carried by one player. The WNBA wanted to prove it could be a permanent fixture in American sports, but unless something changes fast, history may look back on this moment as the peak before the collapse, because if Disney and Amazon quit, the panic inside the WNBA won't just be about bad optics or bad press, it will be about survival itself, and survival in this case is far from guaranteed. This isn't just a bad season, it's the crossroads the WNBA cannot ignore. For a brief moment, Caitlin Clark's stardom gave the league the appearance of unstoppable momentum, packed arenas, soaring ratings, and corporate sponsors lining up to cash in. But with her sidelined, that momentum has collapsed, exposing how dependent the league truly is on one player. Now Disney and Amazon, the two biggest lifelines keeping the WNBA on national screens, are threatening to walk away. Without their support, sponsorships vanish, ratings continue to plummet, and the league's fragile foundation risks crumbling altogether. Fans, networks, and corporations have all made one thing clear: without Clark, the league struggles to matter. And if the networks pull the plug, the future of women's basketball at the professional level, it may never recover from this blow.